Hello and welcome into another Qi Time with me, Clara Apollo. This is your conscious living show. Some of you will be listening to this on audio, others will be watching it on video. We're kind of trying to access as many platforms as we can because I have such a wealth of amazing guests coming through this channel that you don't want to miss them. I'm absolutely thrilled by the wealth of information that's being shared at the moment for us all to glean and to take on board, to make sense for ourselves. And on this episode of Qi Time, I've actually got to revisit here because some of you may know that we have got Ken Cohen, the incredible teacher and scholar of Qigong. He's a world-class, renowned pioneer, actually, of the healing arts of Qigong. He's also a Tai Chi Chuan practitioner as well. And he was on Qi Time a couple of months ago now, which you can access through all the channels. But he's coming back on today to talk with us about the history of Qigong, kind of where did it come from? You know, it seems to be lots of different strands have been weaving into the history of this ancient practice. And why is it so very key for us to be looking at this way of working with ourselves in this day and age indeed? So what I would do is introduce him shortly, but to let you know that he's coming to Bournemouth, UK. I know, 23rd, 24th, 25th of June. Here's a bit of a, let's put it that side, a bit of a lovely picture of that here, Conscious Living Events, that's it. Here, and we do still have spaces available. The early bird tickets are going to be there until the 1st of May, I think it is. So if you want to come along to that and for this intensive primordial Qigong sequence, I mean, honestly, it's going to clear you, connect you, align you, get your mind, your body and spirit all working as the coherent unit that you are in your center. So without any further ado, I will introduce to you the inimitable, the wise, very gracious Mr. Kenneth Cohen.
Oh, I'm not hearing you now.
Hello, Ken.
Yes. Okay, there you are.
How are you? Hello. Welcome back to Qi Time.
Thank you. It's good to be here. And my name is Ken Cohen, or Gao Han in Chinese, and it's a pleasure to be speaking with you again in anticipation of the workshop happening in south of England this June.
Indeed. And you know what, Ken, last time we spoke, I was in Austria, you were in Colorado, and now I'm in the New Forest, and you are where?
And I am in a town in Southern California, not far from San Diego. My wife's family is from this area, and we've been increasingly spending time here. So I've got the mountains in Colorado and the ocean here in California.
Oh, how lovely. Wonderful. So is the Qi very high where you are? Do you tune into that?
The Qi is good. I can't live anywhere if I don't have nature around me. And I've got some trees right outside and a little stream, well, somewhat dry right now, but there's a nice runoff a little bit earlier in the season. So yeah, the Qi is quite good.
Yeah, it was one of the things we mentioned on the last interview was the balancing aspects of nature and how really just to be in nature is probably the best thing that you can do for yourself. So you just corroborated that by what you said.
Absolutely, and it really goes back to the origins of Qigong, because Qigong has its beginnings in early Chinese shamanism. And in fact, there was a discovery not that long ago of a piece of pottery from about 3000 BC that shows a dancing shaman, or probably more properly a shamanka, that is a female shaman, since the shamanic tradition of China was primarily feminine. And this shamanka is in what seems to be a Qigong posture. In fact, when I show this as a slide in a PowerPoint lecture, I try to do a kind of zoom in, and you can see the woman in a stance that looks very much like today's standing meditation, which is a meditative posture used by virtually every Qigong teacher and in every Qigong system. So this goes right back to about 3000 BC. And if we think of the work of the great British scholar Joseph Needham, whose writings I greatly admire, he mentions in his book Science and Civilization in China, specifically Volume 2, that Taoism has its root in the Chinese shamans' search for harmony with nature, along with a tradition of philosopher hermits who withdrew from Chinese society looking for peace and harmony during a period of terrible warfare and bloodshed, probably around the 4th, 5th century BC, and perhaps even before then. It seems to be the merging of this philosopher recluse tradition with shamanism that produced early Taoism, at least Taoist philosophy. There may not have been a Taoist church or monastery at that time. That didn't happen until the 2nd century AD. But certainly the philosophy, and the philosophy of Taoism is the philosophical basis of Qigong. So if we're looking at history of Qigong, we consider shamanism. We also consider evidence from Chinese art, from pottery, from sculptures, and so forth. And certainly the early Taoist literature, particularly Lao Tzu. Lao Tzu, whose name means the old child, and that already tells you something about this philosophy, recovering youthful innocence, clarity of mind, vitality. Lao Tzu wrote his Tao Te Ching as a book of philosophy, of guidance to the emperor about how to rule justly, and it also has what could be called coded information about Qigong. That is, the Qigong advice is not obvious, but if we look at the connotation of the words used in his poetic text, we find out there are indeed veiled references to Qigong. And again, we're talking about around the 5th century, 4th or 5th century BC. For example, I'll give you one example. In one of the chapters, it says, I'll recite it in Chinese, you might find that interesting, and then in English. 圣人之治，虚其心，实其腹. This means in the governing of the sage, well, it's not talking about government, it's actually talking about self-governing or regulation of one's qi. So in the self-governing of the sage, 虚其心, empty the chest, 实其腹, and fill the belly. Well, this is like advice for doing Tai Chi or Qigong. That is, when you're doing your standing or you're doing your Tai Chi form or any Qigong practice, you imagine that the chest is relatively empty. That is, it feels light, free. Look, what you don't want to do would be to lift the chest, because if you lift the sternum, you're going to be encouraging shallow thoracic respiration. Breathing rate will quicken and your breath again will be shallow. So we want to empty the chest while having a feeling of pleasant fullness in the lower abdomen. And that will allow your diaphragm to move properly, so the diaphragm will drop and the belly will expand on inhalation and release on exhalation. So there we see concrete advice about the posture of Qigong. Or we can look at another chapter, one of my very favorites, chapter 40. I actually have memorized quite a bit of the Tao Te Ching. Chapter 40 says, I'll recite in Chinese, 翻着道之动，柔着道之用，天下万物生于有，有生于无. This means reversal is the movement of the Tao. Now think about that. It says reversal is the movement of the Tao. In other words, instead of energy dissipating almost from the moment of birth, we learn to make the energy inflowing and rejuvenating. So instead of there being a gradual dissipation of life force, we learn at a certain age, I mean, especially as one gets older, this becomes important, but we learn how to return to youthfulness. So again, the opening line of that chapter I just recited is, reversal is the movement of the Tao, suppleness is the function of the Tao, under heaven all things are born of something, but something arises from nothing. Well, this is advice, essentially I paraphrase for my students, where I tell them, We need to learn to reverse the outflowing and dissipating course of our life forces. We need to practice suppleness, because as long as the tree is alive, it is supple. That is, the sap is moving through it. When it's old, it's brittle, dry, breaks easily. So suppleness is the essence of Taoism. Suppleness is the essence of health. Then it says, under heaven, all things are born of something, but something arises from nothing. This is a suggestion to link with the primal emptiness, that is, the primal being without concept, without thought, empty of form, empty of phenomena. Link with that Yuan Qi, original Qi, and you will reset your body's entire healing system. And this remains the essence of Qigong. That is, certainly we can, look at any particular health challenge we have and learn a Qigong exercise or meditation to help balance that, help correct that. But the more important goal is to reset the body's entire healing system. And that's the emptiness that Lao Tzu is advising, because in emptiness, that is having an empty mind, there's no division between phenomena. There's no division between me and you, between self and other, between yourself and the natural world. So we have to play with this sort of dual aspect of Qigong all the time. That is, how do we use specific Qigong techniques to address our needs? Maybe Qigong for athletic performance, or Qigong to heal arthritis, or Qigong for addressing problems like cancer or heart disease. And at the same time, having a spiritual perspective that says the ultimate goal of Qigong is linking with the energies of the universe. Now, let me get back a little bit to the history. I mean, we see the Taoist theme running throughout Qigong, but there's also two other rivers or streams that feed the great river of Qigong. We've got Taoism and shamanism, that I already spoke a little bit about. We've also got the medical side, that is how Qigong was used as complementary therapy for various ills, physical or mental. And you've also got Qigong as a kind of athletic training used to improve strength, stamina, coordination, sensitivity, reducing the likelihood of sports-related injuries. So you've got the spiritual, medical, and sports aspects of Qigong. Now, as I said earlier, we see evidence for this going back to pottery images from about 3000 BC. Then around I think it's around the 8th century BC, we have one of the first written texts on Qigong. It's not quite a text, it's actually an inscription on, I believe it was about a dozen pieces of jade. And it talks about the importance of dropping the Qi and concentrating it, and then the Qi will sprout. Now, this is extraordinary. Actually, if you don't mind me looking a little bit off to the side for a moment, I have here a translation. Okay, it's actually 500 BC inscription on these 12 pieces of jade. And it reads as follows, and sounds like a modern Qigong text. A little bit archaic in the way it's expressed. To circulate the Qi, swallow it so that it will gather. If it is gathered, it will expand into spirit. When it expands, it will drop. When it drops, it will become stable. When it is stable, it will be solid. When it is solid, it will sprout. When it sprouts, it will grow. When it grows, it will return. Now there's that returning is the movement of the Tao. There's that theme again. When it returns, it will be heavenly. The heavenly is revealed in the rising of the Qi. The earthly is revealed in the sinking of the Qi. Follow this, and you will live long. Chinese, that's 顺子生. Follow this, and you will live long. Oppose it, and you will die. So already we have Qigong in 500 BC being promoted as a path to longevity. And Qigong has continued to develop since then. There's some great names in the history and development. For example, Hua Tuo, a name known, I think, to anyone who's been enthusiastic of, or a student of Qigong rather. Hua Tuo was one of the first great Chinese doctors, also a great theorist. His works are still read today. And in the 2nd century, he either developed or transmitted. Now, that is, we don't know if he created this or transmitted it. The first Qigong that is still practiced today. That is the choreography developed in the 2nd century. We still see people practicing it now. It's a style that I teach. It's called the 5 Animal Frolics.
Yes.
So in addition to his work with the theories of Chinese medicine and acupuncture, he was a historic figure. He's mentioned in the histories. He was actually one of the first surgeons, and he's very well known for treating General Guangong, who was shot by a poisoned arrow, doing a kind of minor surgery on him. But in the Qigong realm, we think of Hua Tuo as having created the 5 Animal Frolics as a way for people to remain healthy, or as an adjunctive therapy in treatment of disease. The 5 animals, and this, by the way, is another system that I love. Maybe a future trip to the UK will do that one as well.
Yes,
that's
please.
The crane, the bear,
Yes.
the monkey, the deer, and the tiger.
Yes.
Now, this shows you also some of the shamanic connections, because
and nature as well.
Yes. And why was it these 5 animals? Because they observed the animals in nature, not because they were reading about them. It wasn't some intellectual approach to the 5 animals, not because they were observing them in a zoo. I mean, today, if you have to go to a zoo to observe the monkey and learn from the monkey how to move like a monkey, yeah, of course we can do that. But, I'll tell you a little side note about this just for a moment.
Okay.
The first time I was in the Amazon in Brazil, I was taking a cruise with my dad. Now, let me tell you, I usually don't like cruises. I don't like being a tourist. I like to go somewhere and live there and stay there, get to learn about the people, the culture, learn a little bit about the language. But my dad in those days, 30, 40 years back, he loved to go on cruises. He invited me along to be his guest. He was going to treat me. I thought, okay, it's going to be great fun. But I had a secret reason for wanting to go to the Amazon. As soon as the cruise boat landed at one of the ports, instead of joining the tourists on a prearranged tourist trip, I took off by myself and actually ran into the jungle. I warned my dad and some of the other guests that I'd be doing that so they wouldn't be worried about me. They probably still were. But the reason I did that is because I wanted to be in a natural place where I could see monkeys, not in the zoo. I wanted to be around monkeys so that I could then practice the monkey animal frolic. Because if you do the monkey animal frolic among monkeys, and I know this sounds odd, you really get a very different feeling. Because the 5 animals were developed at a time, and think about this, 2nd century AD. It was at a time when people lived with the close presence of the animals. I mean, sometimes you had to worry about them, especially if they were tigers and so forth. So as much as possible, we try to observe nature, and we find out how nature expresses herself through our bodies. As BP Chan, my first Qigong teacher, put it, he said, if you're doing the crane exercise, don't imitate the crane, be the crane. So each of these animals has something to teach us. And every style of Qigong, I mean, whether we're talking about the 5 animal frolics or the styles that developed later, whether through Buddhist or Taoist monasteries or because of particular Chinese doctors looking to create a Qigong or transmit a Qigong that could be used along with acupuncture and herbal medicine. Every one of these Qigong methods has something important to teach us and addresses a different aspect of our mind-body system. In the case of the primordial Qigong that I'll be sharing in England this June, that's one of those systems that looks both at the kind of medical Qigong side of things, that is how we can get Qi to move more fluidly through the meridians, or to use Qigong exercises and meditation to stimulate particular acupuncture points. You don't have to know acupuncture, by the way. There's no need for any previous knowledge of Chinese medicine to fully enjoy and be able to practice this exercise. But the aspects of Chinese medicine you need to learn to appreciate the Qigong we're doing, I will teach you as we go along. So it has the medical aspect, but the other thing about primordial Qigong, Hunyuan Gong, which I'll be again teaching in England, is that you are linking with the primordial. That's the name of it. Hunyuan. You're linking with the energies of the universe. So you're working both on the specific aspects of health as well as what we could call the bigger picture, which is how do I restore my primal energies, those that I was born with before they were corrupted by stress, by physical stress, emotional stress, by our life history, our traumas, and so forth. How do I restore that vitality and energy that we associate with youthfulness? Mm. And how do I restore not only the original Qi in my body, but the link with the original Qi of the cosmos? Remember that William Wordsworth poem that begins, "Heaven lies about us in our infancy"? So people often lose that connection with the all, with the universe. Little children have it. They're connected. We unfortunately educate them out of that connection with the false belief that we are distinct individuals. We're actually not. We are as much linked with each other and with the natural world as a tree is linked with the forest. We need nature to survive. I know people talk about subsistence cultures and they say, well, we're not a subsistence culture anymore. I got news for you. We are. There's no way you can live without nature. No. There might be more buffers between us and nature today. That is, our food is prepackaged and we're not hunting the deer or hunting the wild boar and so forth. Mm. Nevertheless, we're still subsistence in the sense that without nature, we don't survive.
Ken, can I ask you a question about prenatal and postnatal Qi? From the learnings that I've come across is that your prenatal Qi is what you're bequeathed as a combination of your parents when you're born, and when you use it up, you die. But your postnatal Qi is what you're creating with your Qigong practice. And you were just talking a bit about the primordial Qigong being something that helps to restore your Qi. So could you help me understand this a little more?
Well, another simple way to understand the difference between the Xian-Tian Qi and Hou-Tian Qi, prenatal and postnatal, is one is the inborn. It's the sort of energy it's your constitutional energy. And the other is the acquired. So you could think of it as the inborn and the acquired. But there's also a deep connection between the so-called prenatal Qi and this wonderful vitality, clarity of mind, lack of hidden agendas, innocence of mind that we associate with childhood. I think there's a link between that and what the Chinese call the prenatal Qi, the Xian-Tian Qi, and we're learning how to harmonize the postnatal and the prenatal. In other words, please don't confuse this with the kind of mental regression as though we're saying, well, the only thing that's important is the golden age of childhood. No, we're saying that we can maintain, and how wonderful to maintain the wisdom of our life experiences as an adult, and yet reclaim the vitality and energy of the child. That's why one of the goals in Qigong, I love the Chinese language, as you can tell.
Yeah.
One of the goals in Qigong is called Fan Lao Huan Tong, reverse old age and return to youthfulness. Still, another way of expressing the goal of Qigong is Xing Ming Shuang Xiu. Xing means your spiritual nature. Ming, the forces of life. Shuang Xiu means cultivated in balance. So spirit and body cultivated in balance. And still another, because I think we can learn a lot about how a particular healing system characterizes health. Mm-hmm. So another is the Sanbao He, the unification of the three treasures. Three treasures are Jing, Qi, Shen. Jing means your life essence. Some people consider it your reproductive force. It's, of course, linked with sexuality as well, but it's really the kind of essential energy of your being. And then Qi, linked with the breath, the life energy itself, the breath energy, the breath of life. And then Shen, spirit. So Jing Qi Shen, life essence, or sexuality, breath energy, and spirit, all cultivated, balanced, and in unity. So these are, I think, the great expressions of the goal of Qigong. And we can see from this that it's a little bit different, though complementary, definition of health than what we generally think of in the West. Because as the World Health Organization wisely puts it, in their own definition of health, they say health is not merely the absence of disease. How sad that today we're so treatment oriented. That we health is treating disease. And really what the ancient Chinese are saying is more in alignment with the World Health Organization. That is, it's not merely the absence of disease, it's a positive state of physical, mental, social, and we could even say spiritual well-being.
Excuse me, Ken, I'm going to cough. Oh my goodness. I don't know, a little frog got in my throat there.
So we've probably covered most of what we need to cover. I wish all my friends who are watching this here with me in this house in Southern California with beautiful nature and birds singing around me. Probably the microphone is not quite sensitive enough to pick the birds up, but I would invite you to join me for
some tea. There we go.
A cup of wonderful Chinese tea, because I'm also a tea connoisseur. And,
I tell you what I did want to ask you, dear Ken, many things, was about how Qigong was known as Dao Yin. Dao Yin. Sorry, I hope you can hear me. And where, when the actual word Qigong was first used.
So another interesting aspect of Qigong that relates to the history is the very term itself, Qigong. Qigong is a post-1949 term. Some people say, well, Qigong is ancient. Yes, the exercises and meditations that we now label as Qigong are indeed very ancient. But the word Qigong is modern. Originally, Qigong was called either Dao Yin. You can spell it in English, D-A-O-Y-I-N. That means leading and guiding the Qi. And one of the first illustrated books on Qigong, not a text, but illustrations of Qigong, is the Dao Yin 2, the illustrated Dao Yin classic from about 170 or 180 BC. The text was discovered in 1973, not far from the city of Changsha, in the actually at a tomb site, the tomb of King Ma Wangdui. And in that tomb, they found a silk scroll half submerged in water. When they opened it up, lo and behold, there were 44 figures illustrated in various Qigong postures. And the figures were from all walks of life, a scholar, a nobleman or woman, a farmer, young and old, abled and disabled. Well, this shows that by about 180 BC, Qigong was practiced by a broad segment of Chinese society. So that's the first illustrated text, and in those days, it wasn't called Qigong, it was called Dao Yin, leading and guiding the Qi. Now, there's another equally ancient and very much revered word for what we're now calling Qigong. That is, if you look in the Taoist canon, the collection of Taoist literature, it's about 1,200 texts, we find more commonly the term Yang Sheng, Y-A-N-G-S-H-E-N-G. And this is my favorite classical term for Qigong. It means nurturing or nourishing, that's Yang, Sheng, life, nourishing life, nurturing life. Isn't that fantastic? I think that's just such a
lovely, isn't it?
It's such a beautiful word. It's a better word than Qigong. How'd the term Qigong ever get started? If you had it called Yang Sheng, why would somebody call it energy skill, Qi skill? Well, here's what happened.
Okay.
Around 1951, that is 2 years after the Communist Revolution in mainland China, the Chinese government was beginning to feel that Taoist philosophy and arts associated with Taoism, whether you're talking about Yang Sheng or methods of divination or the I Ching or Feng Shui or Chinese astrology and so forth, that these arts were somehow subversive to Chinese communist principles and society. Also, we need to remember that Taoists had a reputation of being somewhat anti-technological. So the fear was that Taoist arts would somehow hold Chinese people back from being part of the modern scientific world. That's actually not the case, but this was the paranoia. So around that same time, two close friends, one was the esteemed doctor of Chinese medicine, acupuncturist Liu Guizhen, along with his friend Hu Yaozhen, Doctor Who, not the Doctor Who of British television, Doctor Who HU. Doctor Who and his friend, Doctor Who was a doctor of Chinese medicine, a martial artist, and a Taoist priest. He with his friend decided to coin a new term because of the fear that there would be a crackdown on Qigong as well, since it was long considered the great healing and meditative and longevity art of Taoism. They said, let's rebrand, let's rename Yang Sheng, nurturing life, and kind of take out that suggestion of spirituality from it. Let's call it energy skill.
Oh, you just answered a question, because I've got this feeling as well that there was something going on about if people became empowered and their own connection with spirit was their own, then they wouldn't be so easy to organize. So that's kind of...
That's right. I think any despotic government that wants to have full control over its citizens, they fear a self-empowering art like Qigong, because Qigong does make one more confident and more autonomous, better able to make your own decisions in life. And I think that's something that we all want. Increasingly, people in mainland China also want that. But certainly during the time of the Communist Revolution, and even more so during the Cultural Revolution in China, there was a real fear of people doing their own thing. So Qigong, I mean, for us as Westerners, we prize that aspect of Qigong, being able to make our own decisions in life and not being so controlled by outside forces that we lose that ability.
Yeah, quite. Absolutely. Ken Cohen here on Qi Time. Absolutely fascinating, all your information, wisdom and stories that are coming through. And I'm really hoping that when you come to the UK you're coming in just before the summer solstice, aren't you? And
that's right. Beautiful time of year to be there.
I know. We planned this well, didn't we?
I think so. I think the universe planned it well. Everything just kind of came together. It's a kind of what Chinese call yuan fen, a kind of karmic affinity.
Yes, I like that. Absolutely. And that when you're here, maybe we can do a little bit more chatting about things as they come up. I'll just put the microphone on and we'll have a subject going, because you are full of so much pertinent information, and then the beautiful stories that embellish it. And then as you speak the Chinese as well, we're really, really getting into the vibe of it all. So I thank you.
Wonderful. Well, thank you. And I look forward to sharing with you and meeting all of my beautiful friends there very soon.
Right, absolutely. And just to say before you go, you were just talking about tea, and I interrupted you, but I would love you to just say a little word before we go about the tea ceremony that you're going to be doing on the Sunday afternoon, and why that's so part of how that is linked with Qigong.
I will try to keep this short, because once you get me started talking on tea, I can talk for hours.
Oh dear.
There's a saying in Buddhism which applies equally to Taoism: Cha, Chan, Yi Wei. Tea and Zen, that is Zen Buddhism, tea and Zen have one taste. So one of the wonders about tea is we find beauty, wisdom, enlightenment in the everyday. It's something as simple as drinking a cup of tea. And yet it's a little more than that, because there is a kind of ceremonial preparation of tea that I will be demonstrating when I'm visiting there. It's not called really tea ceremony. That term is reserved for Japanese tea ceremony, which is itself a beautiful art. But rather in Chinese, we call this Cha-I, the art of tea, because in the case of Chinese tea, quote, ceremony, the purpose is not the ritualized choreography that you have in Japanese tea ceremony, but rather how to serve and drink tea and appreciate tea in such a way that all of our senses are opened to an extraordinary degree, so that we get an aroma that has depths, dimension to it, that you'll smell the tea in your cup. And you'll be doing this with me if you come to that tea gathering we're going to have while I'm in south of England. You smell the cup and there's a surface aroma, and then as the cup dries, there's this aroma of musky sandalwood, and then notes of wildflowers in the background, as though the tea, which has been grown and harvested and prepared carefully, carries the qi, the life force of the mountain where it was grown, and the care of the farmers and other people who planted it, harvested it, and even handcrafted it, because the leaves are individually picked and sometimes folded in a particular manner in order to release their aroma and taste in a unique way. That is, if you have a tea leaf and you fold it, compared to rolling it in your hand, or compared to twisting it into a spiral, those leaves, as they open up in the cup and as more of the surface area of the leaf interacts with the water, will release their aroma in a very unique pattern. So Chinese tea is a deeply sensual art that nevertheless is equally spiritual. So I hope that kind of gives you some idea of what Chinese tea is like.
Oh, fascinating. And yeah, absolutely. It's a real ritual and presence, but also very simple and everyday. And as we drink our tea here on tea time, you know, it's always time to reflect and be with yourself when you have your cups of tea. So just from a very simple
it's a meditation. It's a meditation in motion.
Beautiful, which of course is what Qigong is. Oh,
exactly.
Lovely. Hey, Ken, thank you so much. For anybody that hasn't got hold of Ken's book, his seminal tome here, about to, in its 20th year, it is indeed.
That's right.
There's a lot more information about the history of Qigong in there, and loads more. Stop there. Anyway, and also, if you'd like to catch up with him at his, crikey, what is your website, Ken?
I have a couple of different domain names. They bring you to the same place. One of them is just using my name, KennethCohen.com. That's KennethCohen. So KennethCohen.com. And the other would be QigongHealing.com. QIGONG, healing, HEALING.com.
And you are teaching around the United States at the moment, and then
teaching around the US and also sometimes in Canada and internationally, but most of my work right now, the majority is in the United States. If you go to my website, you'll be able to see my national schedule and a reminder of the dates when I'm going to be in England. Yeah,
which are the 23rd, 24th, 25th of June for consciouslythingevents.co.uk. So if you want to come along to that, head over to that website and give you loads more information. Ken, thank you so much. It's been an absolute joy speaking with you again. Thank you so much for sharing your amazing wisdom.
Thank you very much.
Okay. I have a little track to play you now that we will play listeners, just to sort of lead out with a little theme of the whole sort of Chinese thing going on here, and of bringing us into that lighter state of being. So keep your chi up, my friends. Play you this. Thank you.